Jang Hyun-bok yanked her arm so hard the suitcase flew out of her hand. The wheel clipped the brass edge of the revolving door. The case hit the marble, burst open, and spilled its contents across the entrance of Soaring Crest Hotel. A folded scarf, a small leather notebook, a medicine pouch, a white gift box that bounced once and split open in the rainwater gathering along the threshold. One tiny baby shoe slipped out and floated. Sakura Nuosu-ryu did not scream. Her left hand went straight to her stomach. Her right shoulder slammed against the glass. Rain blew through the open doors and streaked her face before she could catch her breath. "Move her out," Jang barked. "Now." Behind him, the lobby stayed bright, expensive, and disgustingly calm. Chandeliers blazed above polished stone. A pianist near the bar kept playing because no one had told him to stop. Rich guests in dark coats slowed down just enough to enjoy the scandal without admitting they were enjoying it. Sakura planted her feet. Her voice came out low and level, the kind of voice that made frightened people angrier because it refused to tremble. "Take your hand off me." At the front desk, No Yesol straightened the silk scarf at her neck and answered in a tone dressed up as courtesy. "Madam, you were asked several times to leave. Please stop making a scene." Cha So-ryung, wrapped in a cashmere coat that cost more than some people's yearly rent, let out a laugh so soft it somehow reached everyone. "This place used to have standards," she murmured to the manager beside her. "Now anyone can wander in and perform." Minna Rome, the youngest concierge on shift, had already stepped out from behind her podium. She smelled lilies, wet stone, and trouble. "Manager Ma," Min said carefully, "we should verify again. Please." Ma Gyung-tae did not take his eyes off Sakura. "Miss Min, return to your post." Jang pulled again. Sakura slipped on the rain-darkened threshold and went down on one knee. The baby shoe turned in the puddle beside her. That was the exact moment Ryu Tae-gyum stepped out of the private elevator. He had come down from the executive floor with 3 board members behind him, a finance director at his side, and impatience still hardening his face from a meeting no one in the group could afford to get wrong. The smell of cedar polish and machine coffee still clung to his suit. He was halfway across the lobby before his body understood what his eyes had seen. He stopped. So did the men behind him. In all the years Soaring Crest had feared and admired him, not one person in that building had ever watched Tae-gyum lose control of stillness. He did not flinch in public. He did not rush. He did not let emotion touch his face where subordinates could read it. Now every part of him locked. His gaze moved once, her hand over her stomach, the bruise darkening under Jang's fingers, the baby shoe in black water. Then his mind caught up. No. He crossed the marble so fast one of the board members nearly called out after him. He did not look at the staff. He did not look at the crowd. He walked straight into the rain, dropped to one knee in front of her, took off his coat, and wrapped it around her shoulders with hands that shook once before they steadied. "Sakura." Her wet lashes lifted. She looked at him with that terrible, quiet composure only she could carry after pain. "You're late." He closed his eyes for half a breath. Then he stood. The whole entrance felt smaller now, as if the building itself had realized it had made a fatal mistake. Jang took one step back. No Yesol's face drained. Cha So-ryung lowered her chin, calculating. Ma Gyung-tae went pale around the mouth. Tae-jum's voice came out so softly it forced everyone to listen. "Who touched my wife?" No one answered. He looked first at Jang, then at Ma, then at the front desk. "I asked a question." Jang swallowed. "Sir, she was disruptive, we were told." Tae-jum turned toward him slowly. "You saw a pregnant woman. You heard her tell you to stop. You put your hands on her anyway." Then he looked at Ma Gyung-tae. "And you watched." The lobby had no more music in it now. The pianist had finally stopped. If the first 2 minutes of this story have already made you angry, subscribe now. This kind of story only works when the people who hate injustice stay all the way to the end. Ma found his voice first, because men like him trained themselves to survive on polished language. "Vice Chairman Ryu, let me explain." She arrived without identification, claimed access to restricted floors, and disturbed our. "My wife," Tae-joon said, "does not need to claim what belongs to her." That should have ended the scene. It did not, because Sakura swayed. It was the smallest movement, barely visible under the coat around her shoulders, but Tae-joon saw it at once. So did Dr. Han Roon, who had just arrived with 2 medical staff and a wheelchair pushed too quickly down polished stone. Enough, Han snapped. Move. The doctor crouched in the rain beside Zecora, checked her pulse, asked 3 quiet questions, and got 3 steady answers. Zecora was in pain. She would not give it a dramatic shape. Han knew that type. Strong women often made doctors work harder because they hid the danger too well. 26th floor, medical suite, now, Han said, and clear the corridor. Minarome bent into the rain, snatched the baby shoe from the puddle, and tucked it inside a clean service napkin with both hands as if it were something sacred. Zecora saw her do it. Keep it safe, Zecora said. Min bowed too deeply. Yes, madam. The wheelchair rolled toward the private elevator. Tae-joon walked beside it, one hand hovering near Zecora's shoulder without quite touching, as if the air around her had become something he was afraid to disturb. Halfway to the elevator, he stopped and turned back. Lock every incident log, he told his chief of staff. Pull all footage from the last hour. Nobody leaves. Ma tried one last move. Sir, for madam's privacy, perhaps this is best handled discreetly. Tae-joon looked at him as if trying to place where exactly he had misjudged the depth of the man's stupidity. You are speaking, he said, as if you still work here. 48 minutes earlier, Zecora had still been in the back seat of a taxi, one hand on a small white box, listening to a voice note from home. Her Aunt Ifeoma's message filled the car with the familiar music of love disguised as complaint. Zecora, eat before you start acting like one iron woman in that soul rain. And tell that husband of yours to answer when elders call him. Marriage is not invisibility. Laughter burst in the background. A pot lid clanged. Somebody asked if there was enough pepper soup left for evening. Zecora listened twice before the taxi turned under a line of plane trees, glossy with rain. Port Harcourt had its own sound when family gathered around a kitchen. Seoul had another when money gathered around glass. She had learned both. She had survived both. The small white box in her lap held 2 things. Tiny white baby shoes, absurdly soft, and a folded note written in her own hand. You can stop bracing now. This child is staying. She had wanted to tell Tae-joon in person. No calls, no assistant, no carefully managed family statement, just her in his office, with rain on the windows and relief finally allowed into the room. The doctor in Tokyo had cleared her for travel that morning, after making her promise to avoid stress, which in theory was sensible, and in practice had become laughable, the moment she married into one of the most guarded business families in Korea. This pregnancy had been watched with the kind of fear grief teaches quickly. The first one had ended in a hospital room, so bright it still visited them in silence. She wore no display that night. Just a long dark coat, flat shoes, soft gold at her wrist, and her wedding band. Anyone looking for visible wealth would miss the fabric, the stitching, the discipline in the way she stood. That was part of the problem. Institutions trained on status often failed the moment class stopped announcing itself loudly. Zecora had known that lesson since childhood. When she was 10, the sea took her father and left her mother with bills, dignity, and no patience for waste. Ngozi Nwosu turned a small guest house in Port Harcourt into the kind of place that survived, because one woman worked like 3 and smiled like none. She booked rooms, seasoned stock, chased suppliers, and taught her daughter the first rule of service work. Watch what people do when they think you cannot cost them anything. That rule shaped Zecora's life. She learned to read institutions from the bottom up. Which guest was lying? Which cleaner had been blamed unfairly? Which manager stole in neat shoes? Which rich man barked at girls carrying trays and then called himself respectable after church? Wealth talked loudly about standards. Power revealed itself somewhere else. In who was believed. In who was dismissed. In who got removed to keep the room comfortable for money. By 16, Zecora could walk through a reception hall and tell where the rot lived. Years later, that talent made her very valuable. She studied hospitality systems, compliance structures, and service recovery, then built a reputation for finding the hidden leak behind elegant collapse. She was the kind of consultant luxury groups hired when the damage had already been done and shame needed a polished name. She watched, listened, mapped behavior, and wrote reports so precise, even liars respected the danger of them. That was how Crest found her. Or rather, how Tae-joon found himself needing her. At the time, Seorin Crest was admired from the outside and bleeding quietly from within. Supplier fraud, guest allocation bias, hush money settlements buried inside renovation budgets. A culture of deference so rigid it had started serving hierarchy instead of human beings. Tae-joon had called her in expecting intelligence. He got a scalpel. Their first meeting had taken place in a conference room that smelled of tea no one wanted and expensive restraint. He had read half her preliminary notes, leaned back in his chair and asked, with bored contempt sharpened into a test, "Do you enjoy offending rich people?" Sakura had folded her hands and answered, "Only the ones who pay in advance." The room had gone quiet. One senior executive had actually inhaled in shock. Tae-joon had looked at her for 3 long seconds, then said, "Proceed." She did, ruthlessly. By the time she finished, 2 regional heads were gone. One board ally was exposed, and Seorin Crest had a real chance of surviving. What no one outside a very small circle knew was how much of that survival came from her private capital as well. She did not merely consult. She invested through a shielded structure, helped stabilize the group, and then stepped back so the recovery could move without gossip attaching itself to her name. Their marriage came later, and mostly in shadows. That had once felt smart. Public women around powerful Korean men were watched, measured, turned into symbols, then punished for whichever symbol the crowd preferred. Sakura had no hunger for that circus. Tae-joon had even less. He had grown up in a world where affection became leverage the minute it was visible. So they chose privacy. Then loss changed the temperature of that choice. After the first pregnancy ended, Tae-joon tightened everything. Security, access, appearances, guest lists, movement. Privacy turned from a mutual decision into a habit built from fear. Sakura understood why. She also understood that fear, left too long, begins to resemble control. 3 days before the storm, she had called him from Tokyo and told him his hotel culture was shifting in the wrong direction. "Your staff are bowing too quickly," she said. He had been in a meeting even then. Papers moved on his end of the line. "I'll review it after the board vote." "That's the problem," she said. After is where powerful people place the damage they can afford not to see. He had gone quiet. When service becomes fear, she continued, staff stop protecting dignity and start protecting status. Someone in Seoul is sorting people. He did not deny it. He only delayed it. That delay was waiting for her at the front desk. Seorin Crest looked exactly like a place built to make ordinary people feel smaller. Black stone, gold lines, soft jazz, white orchids arranged with mathematical confidence, staff moving in perfect silence, every detail designed to whisper money without needing to say the word. The doorman opened her taxi door and hesitated. That was the first sign. A good doorman should never let thought show on his face. His did. One look at her coat, her simple overnight bag, the travel fatigue she had not bothered to hide, and uncertainty slipped into him. Inside, No Yesil gave her the smile reserved for people management had already decided were probably inconvenient. "Welcome to Seorin Crest. Do you have a reservation?" "Yes," Sakura said. "Open the penthouse elevator, please." "Your name?" "Sakura Nwosu Ryu." No typed, searched, typed again. Her smile thinned. "I'm not seeing a reservation under that name." "It won't be public. In that case, I'll need proof of stay." Sakura set her bag down gently. "Call the executive floor, or call Chairman Park in operations and ask him why the Sky Garden still uses the old access coding from before the winter redesign." No's fingers stopped. That was the first moment Minna Ram looked up and really saw her. Only a handful of people in the building even knew that access dispute had existed. This woman did not sound like a bluffer. She sounded like someone deciding whether the room was worth educating. No recovered first. "Madam, our executive leadership is occupied tonight." "Then send someone with authority." Before No could answer, Cha Soryung drifted close enough to perfume the air with disdain. "What's happening?" Cha asked, even though she had clearly been listening from the start. "A misunderstanding," No said. Cha looked Sakura up and down with the leisurely cruelty of a woman who had spent years mistaking cost for worth. "Then misunderstand it outside." Sakura turned to her, calm as still water. "I was not speaking to you." Cha smiled, the kind that remembers and punishes. "Manager Ma," she called, "I'd like the lobby cleaned." Ma Jung-tae arrived from the side corridor, immaculate and smooth, with concern painted onto his face for the benefit of money. "Miss Cha?" He bowed slightly. Then he turned towards Zecora. "I'm Ma Jung-tae, general manager. How may I help?" "You can start," Zecora said, "by correcting your staff." That was when he really looked at her. Something in his face shifted and then hid itself. Recognition. Just a flicker, barely there. But Zecora lived by reading flickers. She saw it. So did Min, though Min could not yet name it. Ma folded his hands. "I'm told you're requesting access without identification. I'm requesting entry to my suite. There is no suite under your name. That depends on how much truth your system allows itself tonight." Cha gave a soft laugh. "I'm embarrassed for her." Zecora ignored her and looked at Ma. "Call Ryu Tae-joon." No Yesol's polite face almost cracked. Ma's reply came too measured to be innocent. "The vice chairman is unavailable. He'll disagree. He can do that through the proper channels." "And what channel," Zecora asked, "would you recommend for a wife entering her own hotel?" Silence, not confusion. Judgment. One elderly guest turned. Two younger men slowed their conversation. No Yesol went blank in the face, which was how some people hid delight. Cha Soryong's eyes lit up with the pleasure of getting better theater than she had paid for. Min felt something cold move through her. Any room that heard a woman say wife and answered with mockery had already made its moral choice. "Manager," Min said carefully, "we can verify with the chairman's office." Ma did not even face her. "Miss Min, enough." Then he looked at Zecora again. This time recognition settled all the way in. He knew exactly who she was, and he chose. "Escort her out," he said. Jang Yun-bok stepped forward at once, eager in the worst way. "Do not touch me," Zecora said. Jang grabbed her wrist. That should have been the last wrong decision of the night. Instead, it opened the floodgates. Min moved forward. "She's pregnant." No Yesol reached for the desk phone, not to stop anything, but to control the optics. Cha Soryong stayed where she was, enjoying every second. Ma did not intervene. That was the part Zecora would remember longest. Not the brutality, the permission. Jang dragged her one step, then another. The gift box fell on the third. By the time the private elevator opened, the hotel had already told the truth about itself. The medical suite on the 26th floor smelled of clean linen, antiseptic, and the bitter edge of tea gone cool in untouched cups. Rain shivered against the windows. Seoul looked far away, silver and blurred. Dr. Han worked fast, asked calm questions, and did not care that the man in the corner controlled an empire. "For tonight," she said at last, "the baby is stable." That word means stable. It does not mean test me again. Tae-joon exhaled for the first time since the lobby. Han looked from him to Zecora and back again. "No stress, no arguments, no boardroom posturing. If either of you fail me on that, I will become very unpleasant." "I believe you," Zecora said. Han left. Silence came in after her and sat heavily in the room. Tae-joon stayed by the window at first, jaw set, hands useless at his sides. Zecora rested against the pillows under a cream blanket, one hand still over her stomach, the other lying open beside her, as though she had used all the force she meant to spend tonight. At last he moved to the bed. "I should have answered your call." "Yes." "I should have fixed this before it reached you." "Yes." He took the blow of each word without defense. He deserved worse than words. They both knew it. "What hurt most?" he asked quietly. She watched him for a moment. They agreed too fast. His face tightened. "The rain was rain," she said. "His hands were his hands. But the room decided I could be removed almost instantly." He sat down then, slowly, as if his knees had finally admitted what his spine could not. There are things powerful men rarely understand until it happens to the woman they love. Luxury does not become cruel by accident. It becomes cruel by repetition. By rewarding the right kind of rudeness. By teaching staff which guest can damage a career and which one can be dismissed. Zecora had spent years studying that pattern. Tonight she had bled inside it. Tae-joon lowered his head. "I am sorry." The apology was real. It was not enough. Morning drew a softer light over the Sky Garden lounge. The glass winter room above the lobby where Soren Crest handled private proposals and expensive apologies. Pine, tea leaves, and rain-cooled stone scented the air. Below the curved glass wall, the same entrance where she had fallen looked spotless and guiltless in the pale daylight. That was why Zecora chose it. If the hotel was going to reckon with her, It would do so above the exact place it had tried to erase her. Tae-joon came in alone carrying 2 trays. One held abalone porridge. The other held a bowl that made her blink even before he set it down. Pepper soup. Not quite her mother's. Close enough to wound. Your auntie corrected the kitchen twice, he said. Then corrected me. A tiny smile touched her mouth. That sounds like her. He sat opposite her, not at the head of anything, not standing over her, just there. The man who had made vice presidents sweat was now waiting for permission to begin. That was the mirror. Same building, same 2 people. Power had shifted so fully even the furniture seemed to know it. What did the footage show? Sakura asked. He answered directly. Jang ignored the pregnancy warning. No revised the incident notes after the fact. Cha escalated the pressure. Ma paused when she said wife. 19 seconds. Recognition settling into decision. Did he know me? She asked. Yes. She looked down through the glass at the wet stone below. I thought so. There is more. Tae-joon placed a slim file on the table. Complaint settlements were buried in renovation expenses. 4 cases in 18 months. Everyone involved a guest staff judged at first contact to be low value. Sakura closed her eyes for one slow breath. I told you. Yes. The door opened softly. Min Aereum stepped in holding a tablet and the clean cloth packet containing the recovered baby shoe. Madam, Min said, nervous but steady, I found something. Sakura nodded. Come in. Min placed the tablet on the table and opened an old event image from Seorin Crest's 5th anniversary donor reception. There in the background stood Sakura beside Tae-joon. Not labeled, not presented, but visible. Behind them, smiling toward the camera, was Mahjong-tae. He coordinated this event, Min said. When you mentioned the winter access map, I remembered the photo. Tae-joon's gaze hardened. He knew, Sakura said, and used your privacy as cover. Tae-joon replied. Min swallowed. Manager Ma has always been kinder to guests who look expensive. That sentence, Sakura said quietly, is the whole disease. If stories like this hit you because they feel too close to real life, subscribe. The worst cruelty usually arrives wearing a professional smile. By noon, the board had assembled. The main conference room smelled of polished wood, paper, and expensive nerves. Rain ticked softly at the glass. Men who had weathered market crashes and internal coups sat around a long table pretending they had entered an ordinary morning. Oh, Deok-jin arrived last. Of course he did. He liked entering after people had already arranged their fear. He was old money without warmth, controlled, elegant, and dangerous in the way men become dangerous when they believe process is more important than pain. He greeted Tae-joon with a slight incline of the head, looked at Sakura a second longer than courtesy required, and took his seat. This is regrettable, Oh said. Tae-joon did not sit. Read. The packets in front of the board contained footage stills, witness statements, complaint summaries, financial reclassification records, and internal policy language written by men who believed poor treatment could be managed like weather. Oh touched none of it yet. Before anyone detonates 30 years of brand value, we need proportion. A terrible incident does not necessarily justify corporate self-harm. Sakura's face remained still. A pregnant woman was dragged into the rain at her own hotel. Which part needs proportion? A director near the far end looked down. Mang-tae sat very straight. He had changed ties for the meeting. Men like him prepared for war cosmetically. Vice Chairman, Ma said, I deeply regret the distress caused. But the woman who entered the hotel presented herself without identification, used restricted operational language, and claimed executive intimacy during an unusually sensitive board week. My team acted to protect the property. Protect it from whom? Sakura asked. Its owners? A few eyes shifted. Ma ignored her. My concern was infiltration. That word sounds better, she said, than racial profiling in a Kashmir lobby. That landed. Tae-joon touched the remote on the table. The main screen lit up. No summary, no careful explanation, just raw footage. The board watched Sakura enter. Watched Nose smile thin. Watched Cha drift in like perfume with a witness account. Watched Sakura request the penthouse elevator. Heard her say call Ryu Tae-joon. Heard her say wife. Then watched Mahjong-tae freeze for 19 full seconds before ordering her removal. Then came Jang's hand. Then Min's voice. She's pregnant. Then the drag. Then the baby shoe. No one in that room would ever be able to claim uncertainty again. A director with 2 daughters and therefore perhaps one remaining nerve spoke first. "Manager Ma," he said, "did you recognize Madame Ryu?" Ma made his mistake. "No." Min rose from her chair near the wall, nerves shaking under formal posture. "That is false," she said. "He coordinated the donor reception in 2024. He saw her then." Ma shot her a look meant to crush. It failed. Sakura placed the old event photo on the table and slid it toward the nearest director. One by one, the men around the table saw the image and understood exactly what the general manager had done. He had not misjudged a stranger. He had calculated against a private woman. There are 2 kinds of power: the loud kind that announces itself at the door, and the hidden kind men think they can insult because they do not see cameras on it. Ma had bet on the second kind being weak. He had bet wrong. Oh Deokjin stepped in before the room could fully turn. "Then we remove him," he said, measured as ever. "Quietly. We compensate appropriately. We protect Madame Ryu's privacy. We protect the group." The lady, the privacy, the group. The order of his priorities told the whole story. Tae-gyum's face had gone almost blank. That was when he was most dangerous. "No." Oh looked at him. "Public disclosure of this incident tied to your wife's hidden ownership stake and advisory role will create governance questions we do not need." There it was. The second blade. Several directors sat up. Hidden ownership, advisory role. Those words could be weaponized. Oh opened a second folder and slid it down the table. Inside were holding company charts, investment notes, and legal disclosures connected to the quiet structure through which Sakura had helped rescue Seo Crest years earlier. All legal. All vulnerable. If the market reads this carelessly, Oh said, it can be framed as undisclosed influence. We may survive an abusive manager. We may not survive a governance scandal layered onto it. For the first time that day, the danger widened. Ma saw it too and grabbed for life. Exactly. That is why restraint matters. This is larger than one regrettable misunderstanding. Sakura looked at him with almost surgical calm. "You recognized me. You believed my privacy made me disposable. Say misunderstanding again and let the room hear how cheaply you price women." No one interrupted her. Then Ma made the move that nearly saved him. He turned toward the board and asked, "If Madame Ryu is central enough to co-own and advise this group, why did staff not know her? Why was the marriage hidden? Why did she enter without protocol?" It was a clever, filthy question. Because part of it was true. Tae-gyum felt the hit before anyone else did. He had chosen secrecy. He had defended it. He had called it protection often enough that the word had begun to rot. Sakura saw the board's attention shift. This was the moment weak scripts let the hero lecture. She did not. She stood. "I remain private because women in your world are treated as leverage," she said. "I agreed to privacy. I did not agree to erasure. If this board wants to investigate anything, start with complaints buried off ledger. Start with the managers who sort value by clothes and accent. Start with the training that taught staff to fear rich annoyance more than pregnant pain." She let the words settle. "And if you want the real answer to why your general manager felt safe dragging me into the rain, do not ask why I arrived quietly. Ask why your institution has learned to believe that a woman without spectacle can be removed." That broke the room, not with noise, with silence. The meeting ended in fragments. Council called legal, directors split into corners, staff moved faster. Ma Jung-tae was suspended pending full review. Jong and No were pulled from the roster. Cha Seryong started calling everyone she had ever hosted lunch for. And then the world outside got involved. A clipped piece of footage leaked before evening. Not the full scene, only the front desk exchange. Sakura asking for penthouse access. Sakura refusing to leave. Sakura looking composed enough for strangers to call her arrogant. The internet did what it always does when prejudice is handed a polished little lie. Gold digger, pretender, entitled woman, foreign scam, race baiting, mistress. For one poisonous hour, the public tried to do to her what the lobby had done in person. Tae-gyum found her in the unfinished library above the east wing, standing alone between empty shelves and the smell of cedar dust. Rain touched the tall windows. Lamps pooled warm light over half-built beauty. She was looking at the comments on a tablet she should never have been left alone with. He took it from her hand and set it face down. "I'll have it buried." She looked at him. You can bury a clip, you cannot bury the appetite that made people enjoy it. His jaw tightened. Then I'll burn the channels carrying it. Still control, she said. He crossed the room, opened a drawer in one of the unfinished cabinets and brought out the recovered baby shoe. Clean now, dry. The little bow retied badly by hands that clearly had no business with tiny ribbons. He set it on the table between them. I tried. The sight of that crooked bow did more to her than the boardroom had. Then he pulled out the note from the box, unfolded and smoothed. He had read it. His voice dropped. I did not know how much fear had taken from me until I saw you on that floor. She looked at him, and inside her something old and tired shifted. He has always known how to protect. He is only now learning that protection without visibility becomes another kind of loneliness. I thought privacy kept us safe, he said. It did, she answered, for a while. And then it started charging interest. He absorbed that quietly. She sat opposite him. Between them, the baby shoe and the note. What followed was the first completely honest conversation they had allowed themselves since grief taught them how easy it was to live in adjacent pain. Tae-joon looked at the empty shelves. Tell me plainly. You made fear our architect, Sakura said. I wanted fewer targets. You gave me fewer doors. I thought I was taking the blows for us. You chose which blows counted. He closed his eyes once. Opened them again. Then tell me what to do. Do not offer me visibility because you feel guilty, she said. Offer it because you are done hiding the shape of your own life. He looked at her for a long moment. I am, he said. That was the first time she believed him. The next morning, Tae-joon made his move. He called an emergency governance review before legal could finish the misconduct file. On paper, it was about disclosure standards and market stability. In practice, it was a boardroom coup. If he could frame the incident as a private shareholder conflict arriving at a sensitive moment, he could strip Tae-joon of interim authority, bury the scandal quietly, remove Ma without poke fire, and leave the deeper culture untouched. He was not trying to save Seor and Crest. He was trying to save the kind of men who liked it the way it was. When Tae-joon entered the strategy room and saw the review notice, he understood instantly what was happening. Sakura saw it too. If you fight this openly, she said, scanning the document, you may lose the board. He looked at her across the table. If I do not, he said, I lose us. That was the real cliff. Not whether Ma would fall. He was already finished. The question now was whether Tae-joon would choose the empire or the truth. Knowing the truth might take the empire with it. If you've made it this far, you already know this story stopped being about a hotel a long time ago. Subscribe, because the next few minutes are where a man decides what kind of power he can live with. Oh chaired the governance review at noon, with the cold confidence of someone who had buried uglier things before. This session concerns corporate exposure, not emotion, he began. Sakura almost smiled. Tae-joon did not sit until the room did. Then he looked at legal and said, release the full file. Every screen changed. Not selected footage. Everything, the full entrance sequence, the full complaint ledger, settlement transfers signed off through O's office, internal memos redefining discrimination risk as brand management, a recommendation from Tae calling for stronger visual filtering at premium access points, witness statements from staff, the donor photo, the timeline, all of it. O's face changed for the first time. The room saw the second scandal immediately. The rot had not merely been tolerated, it had been budgeted. Ma tried to speak and found his voice useless. Oh, recovered faster. You are detonating this group in front of your enemies. Tae-joon stood. No, Sakura said before he could answer. He's opening a room you sealed and called clean. Then Tae-joon spoke, and every line after that sounded like a door closing. This company will disclose the assault and the complaint pattern. We will establish an external guest integrity office independent of hotel management. Every buried settlement will be reviewed. Every executive tied to concealment will be removed. O's restraint finally cracked. You will gut your own chair. Tae-joon looked at him with a calm that made several directors lower their eyes. Then I will stand somewhere else. That did it. The votes came quickly after that, because men who tolerate corruption often become surprisingly moral once the evidence threatens to stain them personally. Deok-jin resigned before the formal censure could land. Ma Gyung-tae was removed with cause and referred for legal review. Jong disappeared from every active schedule. No Yesul lost her post and the professional future she had mistaken for immunity. Cha Sor-young found that luxury brands enjoy glamorous cruelty right up until the public sees it too clearly. Justice did not arrive as theater. It arrived as signatures, access cancellations, compliance notice, and phones that stopped receiving returned calls. That was enough. What mattered more was what followed. Zecora did not celebrate. She drafted reform language from enforced bed rest, while Dr. Han issued increasingly creative threats to anyone who forgot the phrase reduce stress. Guest advocacy channels, bias audits, staff protection from VIP retaliation, mandatory executive shadow shifts, incident review that no longer answered to brand management. A policy so simple it should have existed from the start. Pregnancy overrides prestige. Always. Min A-Reum was moved into the new guest integrity office and almost cried when she received the appointment. When she came to thank Zecora, Zecora only said, "Do not learn the wrong lesson from this. Speak sooner next time." "Yes, madam." "And stop calling me madam when we are alone." Min's startled smile was one of the first clean things the hotel had produced in days. The marriage disclosure came a week later. No magazine spread. No polished couple portrait. Just a clear statement naming Zecora Nwosu-ryu as wife, strategic advisor, co-owner, and lead sponsor of the Sioran Crest Integrity Reform Program. The market shook, then steadied. Some enemies circled. Others stepped back. Money, for all its vanity, occasionally respects the rare person willing to tell the whole truth while it is still expensive. At home, change looked smaller and stranger. Tae-joon answered Ifeoma's voice notes now, always with the seriousness of a man appearing before a judge. His mother sent seaweed soup and, to the surprise of everyone involved, began asking for pepper soup in return. The kitchen became the first truly shared room in the marriage. Not the boardroom, not the bedroom, the kitchen, where cultures met without strategy and grief finally stopped being the only third thing living between them. Weeks later, Zecora returned to Sioran Crest through the same front entrance. The air smelled of cedar and fresh flowers, but the arrangement had changed. Less icy white. Softer lines. Someone had learned that elegance did not need cruelty to look expensive. Staff greeted her with clear eyes and no theatrical guilt. She preferred that. Dignity was always better than spectacle. At the threshold she paused. The same stone. The same doors. No rain this time. Minarum met her there in her new role, tablet tucked under one arm, posture straighter now. "Welcome back, Mrs. Ryu." Zecora glanced at the stone once, then at Min. "Thank you, Arum." Nothing more was needed. The private acknowledgement came that night at home. The apartment above the river held the warm smell of ginger, stock, and steam-clouded windows. Souls stretched below in soft lights and distant traffic. On the stove, one pot held seaweed soup. Another held pepper soup. Darker and richer, both worlds sharing the same heat. Zecora stood at the counter with damp hair and bare feet, one hand resting lightly at the base of her back. Tae-joon came in, carrying something behind him. He did not announce himself. He simply draped a warm towel over her shoulders and left his hand there for one quiet second longer than necessary. Then he placed the baby shoes on the counter beside her. The bow was right this time. She looked at them, then at him. His face still gave little away easily. It always would. But the tenderness was there now without disguise, and for the first time she did not have to search for it through fear. "No more shadows," he said. 4 words. Enough. Rain brushed the windows in a thin silver pattern. Steam rose from seaweed and pepper, warm and mingling in the kitchen light. Beside the stove, the small white shoes glowed softly against the dark counter, while the city settled into night around them. This story was never only about revenge. It was about what happens when power gets so used to sorting human value that it forgets dignity can one day walk back through the front door and own the building. And it was about love, too. The hard kind. The kind that has to decide whether protection is still love once it starts looking like concealment. So here's the question I want you to answer in the comments. When Tae-joon had the choice, what mattered more to you? That he exposed the system, or that he finally stopped hiding his wife from it? The next story is even more dangerous. A black caregiver takes a night job in the house of a wounded Korean billionaire, only to realize by midnight that the family does not fear his enemies nearly as much as they fear what he remembers. Subscribe for that one if you like your romance tense, your villains polished, and your endings earned.